Have you noticed how the very search for awakening often becomes the greatest obstacle to it? It's a strange and almost humorous paradox. People spend years chasing enlightenment, reading books, practicing rituals, meditating endlessly, all in the hope of reaching some distant state of perfection. And yet the harder they chase it, the further it seems to slip away. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The more you move toward it, the faster it moves away. What most don't realize is that the one who seeks enlightenment is precisely the illusion that prevents it. The ego, ever clever and restless, disguises itself as a spiritual seeker. It says, "I will transcend myself," not seeing the irony in those very words. How can the illusion wake itself up? How can a dreamer force the dream to end by dreaming harder? The search for awakening is often born from subtle dissatisfaction, a quiet feeling that something is missing. But that feeling itself is a trick of the mind, a whisper that says, "If I reach that point, then I'll finally be free." The tragedy is that the seeker becomes trapped in the idea of progress. They replace material ambition with spiritual ambition, trading money for mantras, status for stillness, but the pattern remains the same. The movement of wanting continues. The hunger for more persists. And so, the illusion only deepens, now wearing robes of holiness. The truth, as Alan Watts might say, is both devastating and liberating. You cannot become what you already are. The self that searches is the very veil that hides reality. When the search collapses, when the exhaustion of becoming finally burns itself out, what remains is not achievement but simplicity, a presence that has been here all along. Awakening was never lost. Only your attention was. As long as you believe awakening is something to get, you remain asleep, because the one who seeks is the illusion itself. This is the most subtle trap of all, the ego reborn in spiritual clothing. It changes its language, it decorates itself with purity and purpose, but underneath it's the same restless movement of wanting. It says, "I must meditate more, purify my energy, open my chakras, raise my vibration." It prays not for truth but for progress. It follows gurus as if they were celebrities, collects teachings as trophies, and builds identity around being on the path. Yet every step taken toward enlightenment only confirms the belief that you are not yet there. And so, the search becomes a polished form of avoidance, a way to delay the direct encounter with what already is. This is how illusion sustains itself. It hides behind sacred words and rituals, using the very language of transcendence to reinforce separation. You chant, fast, and follow disciplines hoping to reach the divine, never realizing that the divine is the awareness watching you strive. The ego thrives in this game. It loves complexity, hierarchy, and distance. It turns the infinite into a curriculum, and as long as you play by its rules, you stay in the classroom of illusion, endlessly studying the map but never walking the ground. True awakening begins not by adding more, but by subtracting, stripping away the stories, symbols, and spiritual decorations that the mind clings to for safety. It is not about transcending the human experience, but seeing through the false center that tries to control it. When the spiritual seeker dissolves, what remains is not a saint or a sage, but simple awareness, quiet, ordinary, untouched. The myth collapses, and with it, the seeker disappears into what was always awake. The awakened one doesn't see new dimensions. They see this dimension without filters. That is the secret so easily overlooked. Awakening is not an expansion outward into celestial planes, but an implosion inward, a falling back into what has always been here. The world does not suddenly change. The eyes that see it do. The tree, the sound of traffic, the movement of your own breath. They have been whispering reality all along. The difference is that now there's no commentary, no labeling, no effort to turn experience into meaning. The mind, which once stood between you and life like a translator who never shuts up, finally falls silent. What remains is raw seeing, not I am seeing, but simply seeing. When people say I'm becoming enlightened, they reveal the misunderstanding that keeps them trapped. To become enlightened implies distance, a journey, a destination. But what could you travel toward when you've never left? Enlightenment is not something added to you, it's the absence of the veil that made you think you were separate from it. It's not about seeing more, it's about seeing less. Less illusion, less interpretation, less noise. The awakened perception is astonishingly simple. It looks at a flower and doesn't name it. It hears a voice and doesn't judge it. It feels sadness and doesn't try to fix it. The miracle is not in the content, but in the clarity of presence that witnesses it. You realize that life has always been happening perfectly, even in your confusion, even in your search. To awaken is to finally stop chasing experience and begin inhabiting it. To drop the story, I am awakening, and simply live as the awakening itself. Wordless, effortless, immediate. Most people look at the word tree, not the tree. They read the word love, but rarely feel it. They study the word life, yet are too distracted to live it. That is the essence of illusion, mistaking symbols for reality. We live surrounded by signs, descriptions, and second-hand experiences, and we call that understanding. But no amount of reading about fire can warm your hands. No amount of talk about water can quench your thirst. You can memorize every teaching about awakening and still remain asleep because the words are only the menu. And the menu is never the meal. The tragedy of modern spirituality is that it has become obsessed with menus. We speak endlessly about light, vibration, higher consciousness, yet we rarely stop and see. We study the map of freedom while standing on the very ground it describes. Imagine someone who spends their whole life looking at pictures of the ocean. They know its color, its shape, the names of every current. And then one day, they finally walk to the shore and step into the waves. In that moment, all their knowledge dissolves. The photographs were never wrong. They were simply incomplete. The same is true for awakening. Reading about light is not the same as being luminous. Listening to words about silence is not the same as hearing the quiet hum beneath all things. Reality is not waiting to be understood. It's waiting to be touched, smelled, heard, breathed. The awakened perception doesn't analyze life. It participates in it. When you stop standing apart from the moment, you find that you were never outside of it. The flower, the wind, the heartbeat. They were never metaphors for enlightenment. They were enlightenment speaking in forms too simple for the mind to notice. The ego can wear crystals as easily as it can wear a suit. It can chant mantras with the same pride it once reserved for career titles. This is the modern trap of spirituality, the transformation of awakening into another commodity, another identity to wear. People speak of ascension and energy and higher frequencies, but beneath the shimmering vocabulary lies the same hunger for validation, the same subtle arrogance that whispers, "I'm more conscious than they are." The ancient illusion simply changes its costume. The chase for power becomes the chase for purity. Competition becomes enlightenment. Vanity becomes virtue. The ego doesn't disappear. It rebrands itself as the spiritual self. In this new marketplace of awakening, everything can be sold. Crystals, retreats, sacred oils, expensive courses promising transcendence. The very act of seeking becomes entertainment for the mind, and every concept consumed adds another layer to the illusion. The seeker becomes addicted not to truth, but to the idea of progress. They join communities, repeat slogans, and measure their worth by how detached, calm, or aligned they appear to be. Yet this performance is still rooted in fear, fear of not being enough, fear of falling behind in a race that doesn't exist. The cycle is cruelly elegant. The search creates the concept creates an identity, and the identity becomes the new prison. And the bars of this prison are golden, comforting, sophisticated, spiritual. It feels safe because it feels meaningful. But true awakening is the demolition of all meaning you've borrowed. It strips away your symbols, your labels, your belonging. It reveals that enlightenment is not an aesthetic or a lifestyle. It's the quiet death of the self that needs to prove anything at all. When this realization dawns, discomfort floods in, because you see that even your spirituality was another dream. But only in that disillusionment does real freedom begin. Notice that you can observe even your longing for awakening. The moment you see it, you are already free from it. This is the quiet turning point, the place where the search collapses into seeing. Up until now, awareness was chasing its own reflection, running in circles within the mirror of thought. But when you stop and look directly at the impulse to seek, something extraordinary happens. The seeker becomes the seen. The tension of becoming dissolves into the simplicity of being. You realize that what you have been calling my journey was only movement inside a stillness that never moved. This moment doesn't announce itself with fireworks or revelation. It's subtle, almost ordinary. A shift so gentle that the mind barely notices it, yet its impact is immeasurable. For the first time, you are not thinking about awareness, you are awareness. You are not trying to quiet the mind, you are the silence in which thoughts arise and fade. The longing for awakening becomes just another wave in the ocean of consciousness, and you, the ocean, no longer chase a single wave. Look carefully. Even now thoughts appear, hopes, fears, doubts, but each one passes through a field that does not move. That field is what you truly are. You can watch your body breathe, your heart beat, your mind wander, and see that all of it happens within you, but none of it defines you. The realization is breathtaking in its simplicity. You were never lost, only dreaming of being separate. When this seeing deepens, effort disappears. Practice becomes play. Meditation becomes life, and life itself becomes meditation. There is no distance left between you and the moment. The witness and the witnessed merge into one seamless happening. And in that intimacy with what is, awakening ceases to be an event. It becomes your natural state, wordless, effortless, infinitely present. The you that wants to awaken is only a character in the story, a role written by memory, habit, and language. It's a mask that believes itself to be the face. You think you are the traveler on the road to enlightenment, but what if you are not the traveler at all? What if you are the road, the sky, and the stillness through which every journey unfolds? The moment you begin to sense this, the whole narrative of becoming collapses. The actor realizes the stage has been alive all along. The spotlight that once illuminated the self turns inward and reveals there was never anyone standing in it. You are not a soul trapped inside a body, nor a mind housed behind your eyes. You are the awareness in which the body, the mind, and the stars appear. The space in which existence performs its endless dance. The body breathes, ages, and dissolves. Thoughts rise and fall like waves, yet the screen upon which they appear remains untouched. That screen is what you call I, though it has no shape, no color, no beginning. It was here before you were born and will remain long after the concept of you fades. This realization is not poetic, it is ontological. It rewires the sense of being itself. The boundaries that once divided self and world, inside and outside, life and death, begin to blur. You see that the breath entering your lungs is the same air that leaves the trees, the same energy that moves the stars. You were never separate from anything. Separation was just the dream of the character. When this truth is seen, not as belief but as direct perception, a vast stillness opens. Fear loses its anchor, because what could harm the awareness that contains all things? The story of me dissolves into the infinity of is. The actor bows, the stage remains, and life continues, not as something you live, but as what you are. The more you try to control your awakening, the deeper you fall into illusion. This is the cruel elegance of the spiritual paradox. The harder you grip, the further truth slips from your hands. Control is the language of the ego, the final disguise of fear. It whispers, if I meditate correctly, if I purify enough, if I stay detached, I'll arrive. But control belongs to the same mechanism that created the illusion of separation. The mind trying to manage its own transcendence is like a wave attempting to discipline the ocean. Every effort reinforces the belief that there is a you who must do something to become whole. True liberation begins when you realize there's nothing to manipulate, nothing to master. The universe is already doing you, breathing you, thinking through you, moving your limbs, spinning your atoms. What you call my decisions are ripples in a current far greater than the mind can fathom. When you stop resisting this current, you don't become passive. You become aligned. Life begins to flow through you without distortion. Spontaneity replaces strategy, and presence replaces control. Surrender is not defeat, it's intimacy with existence. It's saying yes to the unfolding, even when it dismantles everything you thought you were. The ego fears this surrender because it means its own death. It clings to spiritual discipline like armor, terrified of losing its imagined command. But awakening is not achieved by the warrior. It is revealed to the one who drops the sword. The miracle is that when control ends, clarity begins. Actions still happen, words are still spoken, choices still arise, but the burden of authorship disappears. You no longer live as a manager of life, but as its expression. In this effortless allowing, freedom blooms, not the freedom to direct reality, but the freedom of being indistinguishable from it. There is no later awakening. There is only the awareness that sees the thought later arise now. The idea of a spiritual timeline, of progress, milestones, and future enlightenment, is one of the mind's most convincing illusions. It gives the ego a project, something to measure, something to chase. It says, "I'm getting closer," or "I'm not ready yet." But both statements exist only in imagination. Time is the stage on which the drama of becoming plays out, yet awakening is not part of that performance. It is the recognition that the entire play, past, present, and future, is appearing in consciousness that is timeless. We speak of growth as though we were moving from darkness to light, from ignorance to wisdom. But growth implies distance, and distance implies time. In truth, there was never a journey. What appears as evolution is just awareness, witnessing its own unfolding moment by moment. The seed doesn't become the tree. The seed and the tree are one process, one happening now. Likewise, the unawakened and the awakened are two masks worn by the same timeless presence. The illusion of time makes us believe in transformation, when in reality there is only revelation, the uncovering of what has always been. Look closely at experience. Every memory of the past is a thought occurring now. Every vision of the future is a thought occurring now. The only thing that truly exists is this moment, and even moment is too small a word for it. This now has no edge, no duration, no opposite. It's not the point between yesterday and tomorrow, it's the vastness in which both appear. When you realize this, all waiting ends, you stop postponing your freedom. There's nothing to reach for because there's nowhere to go. Awakening was never ahead of you. It was the silence beneath your very next breath, already complete, already here. The journey comes full circle when you see that every spiritual myth, every concept of progress, mastery, and transcendence was only the ego trying to decorate its own cage. The seeker, the controller, the disciple of time, all dissolve into the same mirage. The myth of the seeker kept you reaching outward, forever postponing what was already here. The myth of control convinced you that freedom could be engineered, that the ocean could be tamed by the wave. The myth of time promised that awakening would arrive tomorrow, after enough effort or discipline. And the myth of separation drew a fragile border between sacred and profane, between divine and ordinary, as if God could exist anywhere but here. Now, as each illusion falls away, what remains is astonishingly simple, so simple that the mind resists it. There is no seeker, no path, no achievement. There is only the seeing, only awareness itself, empty and full at once. The sacred was never hidden in mountaintops or monasteries. It was in the sound of rain, the taste of breath, the stillness between thoughts. To call it spiritual is already to divide it, to shrink the infinite into a concept. Awakening is not the discovery of something new, but the disappearance of everything unnecessary. It is not the climax of a journey, but the quiet end of pretending there was one. When this realization sinks in, the mind has nothing left to grasp. Silence becomes the final teacher. Words, practices, and philosophies lose their urgency because you recognize that truth cannot be owned. It can only be lived. The moment you stop naming it, it's already here, shimmering in the ordinary. And in that ordinariness lies the greatest revelation. There was never a path to the divine because the divine was the path, the traveler, and the ground beneath your feet all along. So stop chasing the horizon of enlightenment. Every step you take toward it only stretches the distance. Look instead at what's here. The hum of existence under your breath, the warmth of the air against your skin, the quiet awareness listening even now. This is it. The awakening you've been searching for is not waiting in a monastery or a book. It's the stillness behind your thoughts, the gaze behind your eyes, the pulse of life experiencing itself through you. Don't try to understand it. Don't turn it into another belief or goal. Just notice that awareness is already aware, effortless, untouched, infinite. There's no need to earn what has never left you. When you let the mind fall silent even for a moment, the world reveals its own sacredness. Every sound becomes music, every breath a prayer, every movement a dance. You are not the one watching life unfold. You are life unfolding. And in this realization, there is nothing to become, only to be.